I got a working visa and I lived there for a year by myself. Massive lesson to go all the way across the world. Mind you, Australia is an easy country to integrate into, especially if you're Canadian or American. I spent a year there.
Amazing.
And it was beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, your parents typically don't push you to go do a gap year. That's pretty cool that your mom did that. Because I'm sure it's an experience that you treasure in a way, because you were more independent. You had world experience now traveling. Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, the host of this show. I got Renée Warren here as the guest. Renee, super happy that you're here and you're connecting with the audience here.
Well, thanks for having me, Nathan.
Of course. And so we're just excited to kind of hear your story, diving into a little bit about what you are doing right now, what you've done in the past, and your crazy upbringing now up to the point that you are right now. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now? And then we'll dive into just kind of your high performance story here.
Yeah, well, I'm in this hybrid transition, so to speak. Is my company is going through an acquisition, and it's slightly public knowledge because it's called a concentric acquisition. So it's unique in the sense that my clients are coming under the new entity, and I'm essentially starting a PR department at another agency. So it's a interesting emotional season as I step away from the world of agency life and into something new. But that's where I'm at now. Oh gosh, what else is there going on in my life? My podcast Into the Wild is growing, and that's going to be a big focus for me in the future. But all of this messiness and entrepreneurship started when I was 17 years old, when my mom told me to get a job. And I thought, well, geez, entrepreneurs, they make a lot of money and they don't work a lot. So I'm going to do that. And I started a restaurant with my sister.
Wow, a restaurant of all things. Wow.
Because everybody needs to eat, right? So I figured we're going to have clients or customers right away. So we did that. We actually took over the lease of a seasonal place. It was like a snack bar on the side of the highway across from the lake. And it was always busy. So we took over the lease of that and we ran it for 4 years.
What kind of food?
Like hot dogs, hamburgers, everything was made from scratch. And so we didn't know any better. And it was interesting because we were hiring friends and my parents' friends to come and work with us and support us. And this was back in the 90s. So there was no tap. No one paid with credit cards, really. So we would be going home at the end of the day, end of the week, with like wads of cash rolled up underneath our bed. That was our bank.
Wow. Why didn't you get a bank then? I mean, that's unique. I mean, is that a Canadian thing?
Well, we have a bank, but where this place was located wasn't anywhere close to a bank. So when we had all the cash at the end of the day, the till, we would bring home and we would count it and we'd create our float for the next day. So when we had the float for the next day, we had that big roll of cash from the day before. And it was not easy to essentially keep track of sales because we were handwriting what people were ordering on a receipt pad. And it's kind of like, those metal stakes where you'd put the receipt. That's how we operated.
Wow.
There was no there was no balancing the cash at the end of the day on a computer or knowing how many sales we made other than us physically counting the money and rolling the coins. That's what we did in the 90s, baby. The good old days. But it taught me a lot about hustle. The biggest lesson for me at 17 was showing up to work on days when I didn't want to be there. Like I would look out across the lake and I'd see my friends on boats, or friends would stop by saying, yeah, we're going to the beach today. Too bad you can't join us. And that was tough as a teenager. But I will say that discipline has been my through line in being an entrepreneur, the success that I've achieved today.
Did you know that grit and that grind, that awaits every entrepreneur at the very beginning? Did anybody prime you?
I was the laziest kid ever. Like lazy. Even my dad jokes, like they're visiting now. I'm in my 40s and he even jokes around how lazy I was as a kid. Life was just good. I was like this wallflower or this flower child, and I would just coast through my day, and I was just happy, slow like molasses. And then this happened again, because I got this job because I thought entrepreneurship meant you didn't work and you made a lot of money.
Was your sister like that then too?
No, my sister's the opposite. She's like 45 years old. She is the captain of Canada's Masters Ultimate Frisbee team. So if it was an Olympic sport, she'd be an Olympian and she'd be going to the Olympics. She's a pediatric physiotherapist who has a clinic in Ottawa, Canada. She's not me at all.
How important was that then? I mean, the very beginning of entrepreneurship, hitching your wagon to someone that has what you wanted in a way, that was able to push you in that eccentric personality that maybe you weren't at the moment, but that helped you kind of get the idea in your mind of like, hey, let's start something. You're like, yeah, let's do it. I mean, how important was that relationship then?
She was everything to me. So even in school, she's a very smart woman. I was not good in school. I wasn't great. So she was my tutor, and she knew math really well. So she would tutor me. She would help me out. She would help me out with French. She was very studious. And there's part of it that's also to my detriment. If you think about like the second child, life is easier for them because not only do they have parents, but they also have an older sibling who's kind of paved the way. That was my sister. And she took care of me and she protected me. So, which is great. It's a beautiful thing. But also that means when I was let loose in the real world, I didn't have that fallback. And I see it with my kids too. And I was actually talking about this with my parents today when I said, this was the first week of summer camp that my boys are going to all summer where they haven't been in the same group. And I sense this interesting energy from Noah, my youngest, when I dropped him off at camp, saying he was going into a new class with no friends.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? This is good for him. This is great for him because there's no older brother there to help him, remind him, guide him, protect him. He's on his own. So that was important. So the lesson for me, my full autonomy, my full independence was granted when I was 18 and I went away to college. I moved 5 hours away. And that was a huge shock. Massive shock.
So what was that like? I mean, you moved 5 hours away. What degree did you push for yourself? Or what?
So I was a honors business student at this university called Laurier in Southern Ontario. And I got kicked out of the honors program after the first year because I sucked so bad. I remember hiring a girl named Amy who lived up the dorm from me to go to Psychology 101 because I felt that the classes were so boring, but it was a prerequisite for my program. So I hired her to take notes for me. I'm like, go take the best notes. She had really good handwriting. This was in the year 2000. So no one was bringing a laptop to class.
Yeah.
You were still writing your notes in a journal. And so she would highlight stuff and she would photocopy stuff for me. And I studied those notes and it helped. It helped. But I remember after the first week of being in this dorm, I went to do my laundry for the first time ever. And it was like a Sunday afternoon and I show up with my bin of clothes and I put it on the washing machine. I look at all the buttons and I go, what are these? What does permanent press mean? Go back to Amy, knock on her door. Amy, can you help me here for a second? So she came down the hallway, stood in front of the washing machine with me and asked me what's up. And I said, I'd never done laundry before. And she goes, I'm not going to embarrass you, but I'm going to show you once. And then she showed me how to do laundry. And I said, I'm never, ever going to let my kids grow up in a household where they're 18 years old, moving out of the house, and they don't know how to do their own laundry. Now, I'm not throwing my family under the bus. I had a beautiful childhood. The problem was that maybe it was a little bit too beautiful. It was a little bit too coddled. There's a little bit too many things done for me. And there was no really option to fail. It was just, everything was easy.
How about now with some of the things that you're doing with your boys, or even how you handle things if they're new? Do you go like in the trenches, or do you just like expect it? to happen because that's the way you have it now? Or how do you deal with the kids? And
the kids have a very specific list of things they have to do on certain days. And it's printed out by our kitchen, and it's like Mondays this happens, to the point where we hope that they just get it, that it just becomes ritual for them. They don't have to think about it. Because when you're not instilling these healthy habits in them when they're young, then they just expect that this is going to be done for them as they get older. And even though we have a house manager, even though we have tons of help here, they still have to do their own laundry. They have to make their own lunch boxes. They have to empty their bags. They have to fill their water bottles. They have to clean. They make their beds. They still have to do all the things.
Right.
Because if you're not teaching them at such a young age, then they're just going to grow to expect that their life is going to be like that. Because that's what happened to me. And there's no shame on my parents. They wanted to provide a beautiful life. But now my kids are like able to do laundry. They were cooking on a gas stove when they were like 6 years old. Yeah.
How old are your kids now, just to give the audience context of your kids' ages?
11 and 12.
11, 12. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you went to college, you had some of those experiences. Did you end up graduating then?
I did.
Okay.
On the dean's list, top of the class. I turned those things around quickly. Yeah. I made the varsity volleyball team, and I realized I couldn't do both study and play on the team, so I dropped the volleyball team. My grades were terrible. Like, I knew it. I hated it. This is the one thing that I thought was wrong with college and the program that I was taking, is all these prerequisites. Why do I have to take all these courses that I don't want to do? I'm not interested in it, when I could spend that time and that attention studying the programs that actually mattered and that were difficult. Nope. So that just took time. And then, so I graduated the dean's list. And then after that, I wanted to go to grad school. My mom confronted me that summer, and she's like, why don't you just take a time off? Like, why don't you take a gap year? And so I booked a plane ticket to Australia. And I got a working visa, and I lived there for a year by myself. Massive lesson to go all the way across the world. Mind you, Australia is an easy country to integrate into, especially if you're Canadian or American. Spent a year there.
Amazing.
And it was beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, your parents typically don't push you to go do a gap year. That's pretty cool that your mom did that. Because I'm sure it's an experience that you treasure in a way, because you were more independent. You had world experience now, traveling and
that was the only time in my life that I did something so huge, where I didn't have a significant other. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a mortgage. I literally had the money that was in my bank account, 2 suitcases, and that was it. That's all I owned. Very liberating, and definitely an experience I encourage more young people to do.
So you started the restaurant at 17, and you did that for 4 years.
Yeah.
Was that a summer thing, or was that year-round?
Summer.
Okay, so you still went to college then, but then you came back for the summers. And
I was in high school then.
Okay.
So when I grew up in Ontario, we had a thing called OAC, which was an Ontario Academic Credit. So our high school actually went to grade 13.
Interesting. Yeah.
I know. So we had 5 years of high school. They got rid of it. But so I was over high school by the time I graduated.
Yeah. I was done in 11th grade. For sure. For me, I was done. Yeah. I was ready to go. But so you came back from Australia, and then what? Or did you meet some people out there that kind of aligned your vision for what you're doing now? Or how did you end up?
I came back and I worked in my hometown for a year and a bit. Took accounting courses because my dad's best friend ran a company that was one of Canada's top drug and alcohol testing companies. So we booked drug and alcohol tests mostly for truck drivers and people going to work in mines and in the oil fields. Really interesting company. It needed to exist.
Granted, I'm waiting for the story of when you're meeting Dan, and so I'm just hoping that doesn't come up.
Fast forward. There's so much in between. So anyways...
I'm connecting Dan's past story from his upbringing to this now that you're working in drug and alcohol. I mean, that would have been... Yeah,
I was a certified alcohol and breath technician, so I could actually be called upon to go to... Well, actually, whenever there was an 18-wheeler incident, that they were required, mandated to go out and do a breath test for any of the drivers. So I was like the person that was certified on call to go and do this. I've had some crazy stories about CIS where I've had, mothers that just gave birth to a baby come high out of their minds with a newborn baby. It's just, wow. It was humbling. It was very humbling. But anyway, so why I went back to school then was because my dad's best friend, Brian, wanted me to eventually take over the business, and I needed to know how to read financial statements. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But and then eventually moved to Toronto and became one of the first social media influencers in Toronto back in like 2010 because I was on Twitter.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Dan.
On Twitter, of all places. Wow.
On Twitter.
On
the X.
On the X now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Like, how did you moved another place, and that was where you were getting your degree, and then you were also working.
Oh yeah. I moved a different home or apartment every year since I was 18 years old up until about like 30. I was always moving to a cheaper apartment or a cooler house or a different city, a different country. So I got used to moving, and I finally wanted to just plant my roots because it was getting pretty gnarly. But so I was living in Toronto, first and only ever corporate job in downtown Toronto. I don't like big cities. I do not like big cities. I love to visit, but I also love to leave. Mm-hmm. And I was like, the Twitter world of Canadian entrepreneurs was so small back then in like 2010. And there was a company called Mesh Marketing, and they were hosting an event at a really cool facility in Toronto. And at the time I was managing my company's, the place that I worked for, a small blog. And I was interviewing entrepreneurs. And so I saw that Dan was coming to speak. I heard about this guy, and I was like, hey, when you're here, can I pick your brain? Can I interview you for this blog? Long and short of it, I met him that morning. And I mean, the little Twitter image, you never really get a sense of what somebody looks like. And I kind of creeped him online, but no big deal. Then I met him in real life, and I was like, woo, he's taller and better looking than I thought. And he made me nervous, but he asked me out on a date, and we went for dinner and locked it in.
That's amazing. Yeah. How long have you guys been married now?
Married 9 years, together 14.
Amazing. Yeah. With 2 boys, and you guys.
2 boys.
And then, so when you were there, when did you guys move back and forth? Like, what, you guys were still trying to find a route somewhere?
Oh yeah, so we lived in San Francisco for a little bit, but he's from the East Coast of Canada, so we moved to his hometown when we had babies and got married. So we were out there for like 9 years, and then we finally moved to the mountains of British Columbia 4 years ago, almost, and we love it out here. So beautiful.
Yeah, I'm on the West Coast too, in Washington State, so there's so the same Cascade Mountains.
Yeah, we're getting all your smoke up here this summer.
Yeah. And oftentimes it's the opposite. You guys bring it down here.
Oh, it's like one way or the other. It's like whatever the way the jet stream blows.
It just make it happen.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But living on the East Coast and West Coast, I mean, those are really different. And not just like, the environment, but like people, culture, every sort of walk of life is a little bit different. When you were looking at moving, what was so important to you guys that you guys decided to be on the West Coast again and then the East Coast?
So what's interesting, and I don't know if this is factual, but this is my assumption, is during the pandemic, there were 2 cities in Canada that were the fastest growing cities, one of which was Moncton, New Brunswick, where we were living on the East Coast, and Kelowna, BC. Not knowing any of this data, because it only really came out after we made the move, but we moved across the country 4 time zone difference from a sleepy, fun, safe, easygoing community on the East Coast to a place in the mountains where people moved here for the lifestyle. People moved to the East Coast because it was more affordable. And not to shame the East Coast, beautiful people. It is like one of my favorite places in the world to go to in the summertime. But we came here because we wanted the lifestyle. We're nestled between 4 gigantic mountains, skiing, snowboarding, downhill mountain biking, a gorgeous lake, wineries, beautiful restaurants. It's kind of on the map. And we always ask ourselves why it took us so long to get here. And we're here.
Did you uproot from family then?
Dan's family.
Dan's family.
Yeah. I mean, I left home when I was 18 and never really lived with my family again. They're visiting now. Like, we visit each other all the time, but I never moved back home.
Was it for you guys, or was it also for the kids too? I know sometimes that there's facets of school that people take account when they're moving. Yeah. And also like just networking, upbringing, and opportunities. Were those
we trusted that the right people and institutions would be here when we arrived. Just knowing the mindset of the people that live here and the community, that we knew that it was going to be great. We the boys go to different schools. One's a private outdoor school. The other is a public school, because they both just loved the dynamics of each, and they're thriving. Like, so when they were in school on the East Coast, they went to a purely French speaking school, which was very difficult for them, although their first language was French, because the French community is a very different community. It's a very tight knit community, and they're very much protective of their culture. So when we moved here, I remember picking Max up after the first day of school, and I go, "So Bud, how was it?" And the first thing he said to me, he's like, "Mama, I love it so much. They speak my language here." He assumed that all schools in Canada only spoke French, because he had never had any other experience and didn't know any different, because he was in like grade 2 or 3. "They speak my language." And I said, okay, so he feels safe and comfortable here, then I feel good. And they're thriving.
That's good. What about community? I know community's tight with
Huge.
friends and, people that understand you guys.
We have like really good friends back on the East Coast, and yes, we miss them so much. They come visit, we go visit. We'll sometimes meet up in different places in the world too. The friends that we have here, it's almost like we've all been waiting for each other to arrive. Because the cool thing about this community is there's hardly anybody from here. Like, in terms of my friends, yes, there's people from here, but my group of friends have all moved here within the last 5 to 10 years. Yeah. So because of that, it's a different mentality. The mentality is some of them have family here, some of them don't. Regardless, is I want to be around people who share the same beliefs, values, aspirations, and dreams, so we can lift each other up.
And then when you were raising your kids, having kids, traveling back and forth from San Francisco and all these, when did you start your PR company?
So I had an agency back in 2012.
Okay.
And then this is going to go to actually hit that moment, that like rock bottom moment. So if we want to transition into that, we can. Here.
Totally. Help us understand everything.
In 2012, I was 8 months pregnant with Max, my first son. And at the time, I'd been doing contractual work with startups and different businesses, doing their content marketing and social media. And I was partnering with a woman named Heather, who was doing PR for startups. And there was a lot of overlap and synergy with the work we were doing. I brought her out for lunch one day, and I asked her, like a proposal, if she wanted to be my business partner and go into business together. And she's like, "Well, you're 8 months pregnant. So like, is this a now thing?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, we'll figure it out. Babies, they sleep all the time. So I'll be good." Like, little did I know, it was not like that at all. So the company was incorporated in June, and my son was born mid-August. And we had already clients. We were renting, like, got an office space, like toting the baby to work. Like, he was fresh out of the oven, and I was already checking emails. Wow. He was in daycare at a facility full time when he was only 5 weeks old. And that's just unheard of here. Most places don't even allow that, but we made it work. So I'm just overly exhausted, there was no health plan in place. I wasn't sleeping well, I wasn't working out, wasn't eating well. I was just surviving. My business was growing. And at the same time, Dan was going through raising around for his new startup, Clarity. And if anybody's in the world of raising money, it's a lot. And he's always on planes and he was always gone. So I was like solo parenting, growing this business, all this stuff was happening. And the aha moment that really was the thing that set my next level in motion, I'm going to come back to, because I want to paint a picture here. So Max was 4 months old when I found out that I was pregnant again with Noah. Noah joined us Earthside end of July. So my boys are 11 months apart. And the business was growing. Now we had a team of like 4, then 5, then 6, then contractors and clients from South Africa to San Diego, all over the world, different time zone, different needs. But there did come a period in this time where my consistent income was absolutely important for the health of our family's finances. Because Dan was like, I promise we're going to make Clarity work. And he eventually did, because he sold it, and that's great. But at the time, 2 babies requiring my income in order to be able to get a mortgage, to buy a house. And that was a lot. That was a lot on me. We didn't have help. We had a cleaning lady once a week. We had family that would come whenever they had I was doing this all by myself. When Dan was there, we took turns and like sleeping at night, but he was gone. He was on an airplane. So going back to this one moment, I remember this. It was the first time I was going to be away from Max. And this was probably, I think I was like already pregnant with Noah, but I didn't know it. I didn't know, because I was just tired, just thinking it was a newborn thing. But it was the first time I was doing an offsite retreat with my team away from my son. And as I was leaving for the retreat at like 6 o'clock in the morning, I was backing out of the garage and I was looking forward, and I just put my foot down on the gas, and I ended up backing into my husband's car as fast as I could go in the distance that I had, and caused some damage. Nobody was hurt, but it was kind of that moment where I just remember instances in my weeks where I would like go to work or go to daycare and not even recall how I got there or how I got home, or even recall what was happening during the day. And that's dangerous. I wasn't aware. I was just like surviving. I was unhealthy. It was really a stupid time. But what was happening, I was getting fed this narrative that I'm a power woman, a powerful mompreneur. We were a power couple, and I liked that compliment. So I had to maintain the course because I wanted to maintain that identity. But it was at the cost of my well-being. It was at the cost of my happiness, my marriage. I was a crap parent, and I know it, and I'm not being hard on myself. I truly was. And all for this identity of being a power couple. And I have framed pictures of like 3-page spreads in marketing magazines and Business Insider and Forbes and like all this stuff saying how great of an entrepreneur I was because I can do it all. It felt so disingenuous and inauthentic because inside I was like, no, don't do this. This is stupid. I would never recommend any woman do this. This is just not fair to anybody. Nobody should be doing this.
Right.
And it was those moments of just, one day forgetting to drop Noah off at daycare. So they eventually both went to get daycare at the same time. One day I dropped Max off, got in my car, drove to my office. And as I was getting out of the car, locked the doors, walking around the corner, I was like forgetting to do something. I'd forgotten Noah in the car. And he was, 2 months old, 3 months old. And I'm like, this is how kids are forgotten. This is how kids get stuck in overheated vehicles. This is how kids get forgotten at daycare, is when there's just too much going on. So I said, things need to change. And that's when I said, we're laying down the plan, went home that day, spoke with Dan, and we needed to apply business-like philosophies to our family life. However we're doing to succeed in business, we need to bring that home. And that's when I taught myself the art of being okay to delegate And as a mother, that's crazy. We hired a night nanny. She came 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I could sleep through the night. We got our cleaning lady in twice a week. We started asking for help from friends and family without feeling guilty.
Yeah.
And then I started to create space for myself, having like almost nightly baths alone, even just for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And that's when things started to get better, little bit by little bit, more clarity, out of the weeds, into the light. Then Dan sold clarity and I had more capacity. I had delegated a lot of stuff from my to-dos at work and at home. So I could.
How did that conversation go though with your spouse? I mean, I'm thinking of people in the audience and maybe yours as well. It's like to even have that discussion is humbling. It's not easy to even go down that road.
No, it was tough. It was like, no, women are supposed to do this. Mothers are supposed to breastfeed their babies all night, every night until they're 3 or 4 years old. So I'm a terrible mother if I don't do that. Now, with Max, I had postpartum depression, then found out I was pregnant with Noah. I couldn't talk to any of my friends about it because some of them were having infertility issues. So God forbid I say, I'm pregnant again. So all of this stuff was just like bottling up inside. And Noah was had to come early because I was having complications. So even though we thought we had an extra month to prepare, I went for an appointment, an ultrasound, and they said, you're having a baby tomorrow. And I was like, okay, we're having a baby tomorrow. So coming back to the table with Dan, the hardest part was him convincing me that it's okay that somebody else help with the night feeding and taking care of Noah at night. And when I got past that hurdle, we didn't really tell anybody about it at the time because I didn't want anyone to judge, saying, oh, you can't do this. And let me tell you, what a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing it is to trust that somebody else 2 nights a week for a couple months can just help with the baby.
Yeah.
And then there's all this like shame around, breastfeeding and all that journey. And it just like, at the end of the day, I'm like, this is nobody else's business. I remember standing at the top of Powder Mountain, going to a Summit Series event with some pretty notable entrepreneurs. And this was when Max was like probably 3 months old. And I was holding him and then I gave him to Dan. I said, hey, Dan, can you hold him? I have to go to the bathroom. For some reason, the time I left, another woman there who I thought was a friend asked Dan about how my breastfeeding was going and how long I planned to breastfeed. And Dan's like, I don't know, but I think actually Renee decided that she's not doing this anymore. Right? And like even Dan was like, that's a little bit personal. And then, came back upstairs. She wouldn't talk to me. And Dan was like, yeah, it was really weird. After I told her that you were no longer breastfeeding, she got weird and walked away. And almost like I was a terrible mother. And this wasn't the first instance that it happened. It happened many times that people were shaming me. So I'm those type of people that sometimes...
And it's mostly women. I mean,
it's totally women. So men are like, whatever.
They just don't even think or even care about that stuff.
I allow this stuff to just build up and build up and build up. Sometimes I'll talk about it, but I was like, oh shit, like, am I killing my child because I'm not feeding him the way that they expect me to feed him? And like, call my mom, like, what do I do, Mom? She's like, Mom, great advice, whatever. No. And I was living my life based on what other people expected of me and also what I thought people saw me as, not authentically as what I wanted.
Yeah.
And it was literally killing me. Like I was having so many physical issues with my body because of just being so inauthentic. And also to be the woman on stage telling all these other women, you can do it too. Like stupid.
Going back now, retelling yourself, being an entrepreneur and a mom and balancing everything, what would you tell yourself? Oh,
I would create more space and grace in my day. Like even today, it's 2:45 our time. I'm going to pick my boys up at camp in 15 minutes because I want to. and we're going to hang out, and I will tackle anything that happens at work tomorrow morning. I've even put it in my contracts with my clients, the days and times we work. Anything that happens outside of those hours, I'll get to you when I get to you. There's never been an issue.
It's good.
There's hardly ever an emergency. But I'm like, you signed the agreement stating this, so don't come at me saying I wasn't available at 4 p.m. on a Friday. And it's never an issue. And I think the blessing in the pandemic too was that these little like nuances and added elements to agreements are just normal.
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing more dads like working from home and kids coming in, and like kids are sitting on their laps and they're having important meetings. Like we've normalized what it means to be a parent and working.
Yeah. Back in the day before technology, in a way before they had offices, or way back hundreds of years ago, it's like you had family businesses and it was normal to have that.
Yeah, it was normal
thing, And so now with technology and the shift of being everybody at home, it's like we're normalizing what should have been normalized even way back when,
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, why do we have to hide that part of our life if we don't want to? Like there's some people who want to completely disconnect because they don't want their kids to be seen. Like, that's totally fine too. When Dan was I think he was actually at a pitch meeting with potential investors for Clarity when he brought Max, like 2 or 3 months old at the time, in his bucket seat. He was asleep because he was just fed. He put him on the table, the boardroom table, and said, "Hey guys, meet my son Max." And then he went and pitched them, raised some money, and then left. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. So. You're about to maybe sell your company, which is a big deal.
Oh, it's happening.
Is it? Yeah. What's the big plan for you now?
Oh, I'm so excited. So, when you get these like beautiful moments, and for me, it's when I know God is working through me or through us. Dan and I were just chilling out one day, and we're kind of just sharing dreams. And I just said, you know what, Dan? I want to sell my business or do something with it. I don't want to do that work anymore. It's no longer my season for this work. I want to come and support you in building an empire together. And he goes, that makes so much sense. Like, why would you do that for somebody else when you can do it for us? And growing my podcast is going to be a massive focus for me as well. And having more flexibility in our calendar. So we're heading off to Australia and Bali for the month of December, and I'm not working. I'm going to be with the kids. We're going to travel. We're going to support Dan and do my podcast, and then come back and just see where I am needed. But I really want to focus too on the philanthropic side of our family business.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Now, what about, I have a question that I've been starting to ask, your everyday carry. What does that look like? I mean, for women, it's a little bit different, but like...
It's a crystal?
Crystal, you bring that.
So this crystal, I hold, rub, look at, feel for every sales call, podcast recording, business meeting. It is here. And it's something that I have with me everywhere. But carry is in like an object or a thought or a belief.
Like I bring my phone, I bring a pen wherever I'm at, because I'm always like, someone will need it or I'll need it. People have their wallet, or they have the gun, or they have something,
A gun. You're talking to a Canadian here. There are no guns.
I know. I'm just saying, I'm just giving you an example of what I've seen and heard. But
the crystal, I have crystals tucked away in all my bags and every purse, some of my jackets. I'm always with a water bottle.
Yeah.
Always. I actually have a water bottle by my bed, on my desk, downstairs on the counter. So at the end of the day, I actually don't even know how much water I drank, because I'm drinking from all of them. But yeah, definitely water bottle.
There you go. And then give us some principles that you live by, or things that you've learned that are what made you who you are now.
In this current season, so Dan and I work on our marriage more than we work on parenting. And we work on ourselves in that marriage. We're reading this book called If the Buddha Married. So we do book studies together.
Interesting. Okay.
And the one thing that really...
So wait, do you read to Dan, or do you read separate and come together? Like how
but I did see something on Instagram the other day about how this woman, her marriage changed because her husband started reading to her every night. I was like, no dice. That ain't happening in my household. But what we do is we read the section, and then on our date nights or at our weekly meetings, we'll come together and we'll just kind of go over the things that really hit home for us. But in it, the thing about being an us. So when we look at a marriage or any sort of partnership, we always think of a they and a me, right? And we think if there's any issue in our marriage, it's mostly because of them. They don't listen. They're not communicating. Right? We hardly ever hold up the mirror, which is actually 90% of the issue. But also, people don't look at any sort of partnership as an us. Like, we're in this together. You come together as a couple because you want to be together for the most part in a normal North American, Christian marriage. That's what it is. And you can even look at the them and an us in a business partnership, or as a parent, or with your parents, or with your siblings. There's relationships there. Is yes, there's a them, yes, there's a me, but mostly there's an us. And when you can actually look at that union from that perspective of, ooh, if there's an us, that means I have a responsibility here as well. And so do they. And you have to show up as much as you can. You don't have to reflect exactly what they're providing, but enough as you can. That changed everything for me. Because I feel like if I'm ever dragging my feet, I am not contributing to the us. I'm actually making it harder for him to thrive, because now he feels a sense of obligation to always support this foundation when it's both of our responsibility. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. Is this what you talk a lot about on your own podcast?
Yeah, some of the stuff.
Yeah.
I interview a lot of female entrepreneurs to talk about this stuff, but also dive deep really quickly in where their genius is at. But people love talking about this stuff.
So how can people connect with you more, follow you? I mean, I'll put every link down below in the description here. But how can people connect with you more?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram, Renee_Warren, or they can find my podcast. It's called Into the Wild.
Amazing. I'll link all that down below for sure. Any last thoughts before we sign off for today?
No, but okay, I know there was two parts of the question, habits and rituals, but what was the one thing that you really wanted to get to?
I mean, we did do a lot of it. I mean, the big question that I try to ask in all the stories is, why are you a high performer, or what makes up a high performer?
Yes. Okay.
Your definition of that.
Yes. So what makes up a high performer? I say consistency is your currency. The people that I know are the most successful are the most disciplined, because they're consistently doing the thing they know that's getting them closer to the finish line. They say life is a game of inches. It's not like you're just going yards. It's inches. So every inch matters. So consistency is your currency.
People do that with the wrong things. How do you encourage
100%.
people to do the right things? Consistency in the right things.
Well, I think most people have the answer within them. Everybody has the answer within them. It's cultural beliefs, it's expectations, it's pressure to move away from their truth. Like a woman who decides to not have kids because they don't want to have kids